Hello and welcome to this CodeBuddies.org live code hangout. CodeBuddies is a global community of amazing people who help each other become better at software development through conversations on Slack and peer-to-peer organized study groups and virtual hangouts. In this virtual hangout, we'll be working on a website migration for Western Friend. We've got a community website with magazine, bookstore, library, community portal, Memorial Minutes, contact form, and several other features. We're migrating that content from Drupal to the Wagtail CMS. Let me show that up really quick. Wagtail is a powerful CMS for modern websites. It's basically like WordPress for Django. So it's built on Python and Django, and it brings a WordPress-like user experience for the content management or content manager. Our source code is open source here on GitHub. And I've got it open locally on a branch. We're working on a pull request where I'm writing importers. So I've exported the content from Drupal. We've gone through some cleaning and deduping, where we've cleaned out white space, separated first names and last names, for example, and then removed duplicate people. And today we're going to continue on that. Essentially, a Wagtail content importer is just like a Drupal management command. And we are working on library items. We're going to be working on multimedia library as well as authors. So let me get that open. It's the first time I've been streaming in a while. And I haven't been working with this code very much in recent weeks. So it's going to be a little bit of a slow start today. But I hope to get up to speed quickly with my own code and get back on track with these live streams. But first, some tea. All right, so we've got a couple of things. We're migrating data between two content management systems, and we're also migrating the data structures in Django project. So they're two uses of the same word. Within a Django project, data migration is just changes to the structure and layout of your data. You can add tables, for example, with various columns, change columns. Here's a migration where I'm renaming some fields to make them more specific. We have some Drupal taxonomies that we have an authors taxonomy, and I realized that we're converging two taxonomies, basically two sets of authors from our multimedia library and our magazine, both of which have library items have authors and magazine articles have authors, but we use separate taxonomies for pragmatic reasons. So I just needed to be clear about that. So essentially what we have in these authors taxonomies are going to, more or less proper models. We're calling contact models. In their database tables, we have three main contact types. I'm trying to think a little bit ahead, and I might be able to abstract this code so it's generally useful and release it as a separate module, like an open source module, but right now it's very specific to Western Friends, so I'll have to, once we get this migration complete, then I can talk to Mary about if we can release, the code is open source, but release these packages as a little standalone Drupal app. So we have persons, meetings, and organizations. A person has a given name and family name, and this Drupal full name, which is a field that essentially is the full given and family name without them being split out. And we have to parse them all and split them out and then do some manual cleanup to get these given name and family names, because in the taxonomy it only has one title field. So we have those people coming from the magazine authors collection taxonomy and the library authors taxonomy. So one person can come from both, actually. The same person can be represented in separate taxonomies as two different entities. It's a little bit messy, and so we're taking this opportunity to clean up our act. I better drink some more tea. Okay. And the main difference between a person and an organization or meeting is that everything inherits here from the Wagtail page model. And so all page entities have a title and a bunch of other fields that Wagtail provides out of the box, and a hierarchical model structure where you have nesting, and you have like a draft and revision history. It's pretty powerful. So we just added a few of our own fields. So again, these organizations can have a Drupal full name, author ID, and library author ID. So organizations can create media and also publish articles, as well as Quaker meetings. They can all kind of contribute to Western Friend in various ways. I think at this point the Drupal full name field is kind of, all of this will be deprecated once we get the migration complete and feel like the new version of the website, is launched and is in good health. I'm going to remove those fields and then look at making things more generic. Okay, so the other part of this is I have some raw data. Let me bring that up. So I'm kind of refreshing myself as well as kind of showing where we're at in terms of how this process is going. Just a bunch of CSV files and some IPython notebooks where I've needed to do some parsing and cleaning and deduping and things like that. Actually, the deduping was more or less a manual process. You can't really automate that, but the parsing first pass was relatively straightforward. It needed some manual attention though afterwards. And then I've been date stamping. So not perfectly organized process, but at least enough to give me an idea of where I stand. Sort of. So I have 4 library item authors parsed. Same date. I think this generic one is the one I'm targeting. One of the steps I'm going to want to take is, in order to migrate this to the cloud, to an actual hosting provider, I'm going to need to move these into an online location. So there they are. These are the raw ones. They're needed. And we parsed them. And that just means splitting out, giving a family name with a really rudimentary approach, just string slicing basically, or splitting. Then Huh, well, looking for dates, but okay. So these are pretty much the same thing, so I'm going to delete this one. And we have a newer version of these library item authors where Mary has gone through and done a bunch of manual work. So let me go ahead and download that over here. I'm doing it off stream real quick. I'm going to try to spend about an hour on this right now just to get back up to speed. I'm not sure how much progress I'll make. And I'll come back to it a little bit later tonight, probably. $420, $414. Oh yeah, we have library item. All right, so we have library item. Authors parsed. You can see here or after. So we've got this Drupal full name and a library author ID. We did some deduping. There were a few records that were duplicates of library item authors. Seems like a high number. Oh, here we go. Or actually, sorry. This is a duplicate of a library author right here. It's the same person, William and Bill. Got entered separately, so I'm gonna have to account for that in my script. Then there's also essentially, as I mentioned, people or organizations could publish library items, which are like videos or other multimedia poems or other multimedia artifacts, or they could actually publish magazine articles. So in this case, both of these, William Durand or Bill Durand is the corrected name, also correspond to magazine author number ID 223. So I've got to fold these in. I got to dedupe using these IDs and then fold these into the common pool of authors. So this is we're cleaning up our data a little bit. It wasn't so super messy. We were able to work together to figure out a relatively good approach. So I'm able to actually import all of the magazine authors. I've got a script that does that. We'll review it real quick, and then I need to continue on this script for library item authors. Or library authors, which actually I haven't started. Yeah, and I need these to be in CSV format for the importer to work. Okay, I see what I'm doing there. That's why I have a little bit of duplication. So this one's out of date. I just need to take this one and export it as CSV. Excellent, now we'll refer to this. And one other thing, let's just check the status of the local server. Let me see how much content I've imported. So I'm running poetry to activate our virtual environment. Make sure everything's installed, I think. Should be good to go. On the server real quick. Yeah, so just a good amount of time is just getting set up since I haven't been in the process of doing these code sessions very much lately. All right, so let's run those migrations. Localhost. We're running 8,000 here in this project. So it looks like I've got a good amount of content imported. We'll go to the Wagtail admin. I've got contacts, people. It looks like most of the authors have been imported. Drupal format. 200 pages of. Yeah, because I think I just stopped relying on the full name during this import. I'm creating a person. We should have Drupal author ID now. So let me go ahead and display that. We can maybe fully deprecate this Drupal full name. It's a little bit ambiguous. We need these IDs are exactly, they're more precise basically. Content migration model. Wagtail hooks is where we define, I wish it wasn't named Wagtail hook, but anyway, this person model admin right here, and I'm telling it to display Drupal full name column. Instead, we want it to display Drupal author ID, I think it was. And these should be populated. Yep. I didn't refresh, did I? Yes. Server refresh. There we go. Okay, so that's good. And the other one we're going to import, which exists on the model but hasn't been used, is Drupal library item author ID. Because again, some people will appear in both the library and the magazine. Some people will appear in one or the other. Those are all of the contacts. So every person here should be in at least one of the two collections. All right, the only place that Drupal full name is used now is library and facets. Because facets is also a taxonomy. Huh. But in any case, I can remove this Drupal full name from the contact model just to make my work a little bit simpler. I'm going to delete the before we go with the final launch, I'll probably just squash all these migrations and get everything nice and clean. I'm the only developer here anyway, so. That is going to cause a little bit of problem. Let me just, because actually, that Drupal full name was a hidden field that wasn't included in the field in the panel's description of website. Description of email. Yeah, okay, that won't be a problem. So yeah, just remove that field. Commit those changes. Magazine. Push these up. Okay, very cool. And I am keeping an eye over here on the YouTube chat if anyone's watching and would like to ask any questions about the project or make any comments or just general have any questions about web development, open source work. Don't mind getting off on tangents and having discussions. All right, just checking the time. We're about 20 minutes in. I think I can keep working on this for another 20 minutes or so. Take a short break and then enjoy some of this kind of almost summer weather that's just arrived. All right, so we need to leave the library and facets alone. We're done with that. I don't think I'm going to be changing the models right now. So importing the authors seems to be working fine. Now I need to write an importer for the library item authors. So that's easy enough to do. Basically copying and pasting them. And I'm going to essentially copy and paste the magazine authors importer because it's doing, they're very similar patterns, and I might even be able to use unified importer for them both, because even the CSVs are in the same structure. I'm gonna treat them a little bit. I'm gonna treat them as separate because I think there are some nuances. Everything is basically merging into the same into the same collection, and the CSV structure is not exactly the same in both. So I'm gonna basically you define management commands in whatever Drupal app you're running, Django app you're creating, and this will be library item authors. It's just a Python file. And the command is just the name of the file, basically. I'm going have to look at these very closely because in this case, the Drupal author ID, yeah, I'm going to come back to this. I'll have a magazine item ID just for context. I'm going by memory quite a lot here. So this Drupal full name is pretty much not in use anymore for our purposes. But I'll have a Drupal library author ID. Duplicate of authors in the library, and then magazine author ID. So I will need to look at that model. I'll keep it up here for reference. Okay, that was all right. So we'll just go to this top to bottom, but there's a couple helper functions along the way we'll revisit in context. So we're defining a base command that inherits from base command. We're going to give it a file. Later on, I'm going to have to figure out how to switch between my local file system and a kind of a cloud, like S3-like file system called DigitalOcean Spaces. It has the S3 API. So I will basically point it to a collection of files, like a folder, or I guess they would call it a bucket in Spaces or a DigitalOcean space. In any case, right now we're using a file. We're loading it. Right, the less I change here, the better. I think we're going to call it authors, and we'll get the authors list. And for each of those, we're going to iterate over it. This TQDM is going to give me a progress bar. And we're going to check the entity type. So here's where we're going to start to deviate. This is actually Drupal. Yes, that's good. And then this is a little bit janky about how it scrolls columns. Frustrating. Has it like scroll to the beginning of a column. It won't let you smooth scroll. It's disorienting, and there's been a long-standing feature request about that. All right, so that's going to be the same. We use the same column headers, meeting name and organization name. So we're going to create a couple bools here, and then one that checks the, I guess, the default case, but anyway. So we're at the same field here for the duplicate of ID. We'll pass. We'll use this in the future when we're linking the authors to the actual library items or the magazine articles. The library items in this case will still have this library item author ID 3670 in this case. Well, at that point of import, when we find this one, we'll look up the row in the table and we'll find that it's a duplicate of 4445, and we'll associate it with that author programmatically. But for now, we're just not going to create these duplicates in the database at all. I moved over halfway through my teapot. Yeah, and then the rest of the command is fairly straightforward. You just handle these three cases with bespoke functions. So we're going to look, this is where most of the work is done. So create meeting. going to get our meeting index page. Wagtail's a hierarchical content model. The Wagtail page models are hierarchical, so we're going to put all these meetings underneath this index page. It's like a manila folder kind of, and it's a folder to hold all the meetings. So there's not one parent meeting. I have to have something to organize these in, otherwise everything can get in just the root namespace or the root folder or something, I don't know. All right. This is the same. This is different. And I'll just double check our model here that the meeting objects have Drupal library author ID field. Drupal library item author ID. Oops, Drupal. Let me make sure I'm reading this correctly. Library author ID. Nope, I don't. Yes, Drupal library author ID is correct. Yep. So we'll find that the meeting exists. Quick pull check. Then we'll create it. If it doesn't exist, we'll add it as a child of the index page and save it. You have to save the index page to jiggle the handle kind of a thing. I don't know, make it work. Luckily, I struggled through this with the previously, and so in my reduced state of mind right now, I can just kind of read my own code and not have to write this. It wasn't too bad. I'm not trying to complain here. Organization index page, so it's the same pattern. What we're after here is still this library author, because we're importing the library author. That's the main difference. Gotta be aware of. Same thing, add as child. You know, this is the same exact code, really. I don't know how to make it more generic. The only thing that changes is the you know, I do actually know how to make it more generic. The only thing that changes is the class that we're using here. Here and here. I'm just not sure if it's worth making this so generic. It would be, I would create a dictionary with 3 keys: person, organization, and meeting. And then those would hold a dictionary of index page class and page class. And then I can yeah, it's not worth it. I can use those here, access them here. I would pass that in. But see, it would fall apart here. These two, meeting and organization, I could do more generically, but then for the person name, I actually need to be a little bit different with the given name and family name. So let me come back up here. Yeah, I think this is going to need to change a little bit because I could end up with duplicates across boundaries here. So I need to add some logic here. is actually where that refactor might be useful. So let me just sketch it out. Contact classes. And we can say create contact. So essentially, yeah, we got this. Oh, I have my clipboard. Done with that. So we got contact classes for contact type. I'll just do this. It's redundant. It's a little bit wide, but not too bad. Few characters, shave a few characters off there. All right, so I've got the index page. That's the problem. I still need. This won't work. No. All right. It was a thought. It was worth it. Worth kind of seeing. It gets difficult to think that abstractly down the road, so sometimes you just got to go down a little bit down the path, see what it looks like, and then realize it was a mistake in this case, I believe. I can't get too elegant. I just repeating these things that are so similar, it's real easy to introduce errors. So I just want to be careful. And so if I can share code to the extent possible, I'll try to do that. You know, these are only like 20 lines or so. I think it's manageable. But they're going to grow by about 10 or 20 lines right now because I believe I have to add this deduping logic inside here. Both internally actually I've got one condition I can use, so I wonder if I can use it if there's an or filter or. I can check the library that there's a one that has a library item author ID that matches, or matching magazine author. Let's check that out. I bet Django's got some kind of a filter or. Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually it might not be too bad here. That's been around for a while too. Over 10 years. That's what I really like, using something that even to this day, the latest dev version of it has backwards compatibility to a certain extent. And as I'm sure built on this queue object. Mm-hmm. So you can and or, not pipe, but just or. Now you can, all right. Ooh. Wow. So this is essentially what I want. I'll put the pipe on the front so it's clear. All right. So just, I think by changing this filter, I'll be able to dedupe these library item author imports. Because basically, if the author's already been imported when I do the magazine author import, I don't want to create a new record when doing the library item authors import. Yeah, so it's a little bit tricky. We did as much as we could in the CSV, but I've got to just do some of this in code. So yeah, what we're going to do then, I wonder if I can use exists, and they're using git. Yeah, so I just basically put the queue in here. I'm going to need to import it. Let's see if this will do an auto import for me. That's cool. I was looking for that. Beautiful. think it's a relatively new feature of VS Code since they switched to this. It might be relating to switching to this, this new Python engine. Okay. And I will use or Q. And our data this field, and the model is just this field. There we go. And I'll use that field in the Q statement. All right. And so since it says I can chain it, I believe this exists should work. This is basically all of these filters are going to be the ones to replace. But I need to also could pass those both in as arguments. I'm accessing other properties, so oh well. Actually using and I'm putting this dedupe logic up here, aren't I? And that's a cheaper way of doing it because I'm just checking a string directly. I'm not doing a database call, so all right, I've got to really think this through because I have to think of how I'm going to use these. Essentially, if the author ID exists, I want to put this information on their record. There's not many cases of this. I think I caught that. So there might be much ado about nothing. In case I can't have these question marks, that's going to throw the whole thing off. So we're going to have to take that in stride. No, actually, most of these. So the duplicate check I do want to do for the library item and just bypass it. So that's good. But in here, trickier. Two bits of information. These magazine authors will have been imported already, and these are on the process of being imported. So all of these IDs would exist. So in any case, now I'm back at this stopping point. Let's make sure, let me just check my deltas here. Oh, of course, this is all in there. Wow. Yeah. All right, so if this exists, I'll need an else here. Yeah, so we can just do this. Might as well grab all those fields, library item author and article author if it exists. And by definition, it wouldn't exist here. Otherwise, I'm going to fetch through keyboard. Fetch the person. Set a field. I think these are mutable. Save that person. I think that'll be a cross-reference. So these rows like this will have an ID for both magazine and library. Magazine singular. All right. Duplicates wouldn't have even entered into this. So Bill Derlin. This William Derlin would just not have entered into this loop. Great. Whew. So these I need to actually return to their original form. Okay, but they're above person. Meeting. I need to get that value in both cases. It's a bit tangly, but that's why one of the things I like about code is that once you untangle it, it's all there written down. You can test it each step of the way. Find out what you did wrong, generally fix it. Once you've fixed it, then you can take the next step. You're on your way. All right, so first these are basically checking for existing author ID, organization, meeting. Good. If not exists, now we need this else clause. And it's basically copy and paste and changing meeting to organization, person to organization, person to meeting. Same. I think that's it. I might as well try running it, see what I've overlooked. Something like that. All right, just a reminder. So I think at this point I can run the command. In the case of duplicates, it's going to discard this data. It's going to take the, I mentioned this to Mary, it's going to take the magazine author for a family given organization or meeting name as sort of the canonical or official representation, and these it will only use in the case where they're not a duplicate, so in very few cases. Yes, yes indeed. All right, and we're not using this. Oh, I see, I see. We weren't using it because I didn't replace that. That's the good thing about having a good IDE, which I've really been finding VS Code satisfactory in a lot of ways. So let's try it out. Ready? Manage Pi. Oh, it's not. Oh yes, this is the problem. Yeah. Just a little bit of note to help Mary. Yeah, okay, that's what I was thinking. They're not mutable. Oh, I think you just do. Yeah. That makes sense. So in the database here, the IDs are numeric, and in the CSV, these are empty strings when there's no values. Okay. There's got to be a clean way of doing this. So what I'm trying to do. Now it should be able to take a none, though I believe that should work. It's a little bit circular. Oh yeah, so dictionary get, and I can return none there. Yeah, that should work. Yeah. Let me just double check this in Python. Get or none. Dictionary get with it, you can set the default. Yeah. But that could be problematic because then the next, I'm using it. None could potentially match a lot of them. Or could it? Not during the initial import. Every single author has a Drupal author ID right now during this import process. The server's not running. So I cannot run this import. This is like a I could write this in a safe way. All right, so if not meaning exists, yeah, I know how it is. All right, first let me get this. And that should, I think, default to none. So see what this looks like. So if this is none, it can't possibly exist. If it isn't none, we're going to look it up. In which case, though, but again, this is protecting against the case where I'm running the importer after we've started creating data. Which is a possibility we might need to, for whatever reason. I don't know if this is premature optimization. I'm not sure what the safer assumption is. The code is not too mind-bending. That gives myself a hint, because I believe even in the sandbox site, I might be rerunning these importers. For example, content's changing on the production site, Mary's tinkering with the existing site. I believe there's some degree of likelihood that these few lines of code will save me some headache in the future. So that is what I'll do. But I got it wrong. One thing wrong. This one needs to change. Oh man, this is some more challenging code I've done. Yeah, because right above there I use that key. Mental gymnastics. Goodness gracious. Try that one more time. That's what the order matters so much there. I was just trying to see if it makes the code more readable. All right, boy. Now we will avoid this issue with string and integer. As long as none, the field does allow none. Or null and blank, I believe, which none should do, or don't know what else to default it to. Good. I'll come back to that later. Alrighty then. Let's see if we get a different error this time, at least. Oh, progress. Very cool. Now, assuming it's not throwing everybody away, which it doesn't seem to be. It's 12 rows a second, pretty fast. It's not pulling in data from the network. Some of our other importers are actually pulling in like PDF files and images. I should run the server and check it out. I should have both values in both columns. Yes. Whoa. We have some duplicates though. Now the question is whether these duplicates came as a result of my script. I'll have to reboot it. Okay, so that's the next step. I need to take a break because this has been a little bit mentally taxing. I think this is good progress, but it may be in a broken state. In any case, I'll commit it and push it. Yes. Why don't I just actually power through it real quick? Power through it. Power through. What I can do. Drop all the contacts. Is it contact? What is the name of the model? The contact. Yeah, I'm getting tired. Apparently, it's the middle of the day. A lot of them. I think I didn't get this. This deduping part correct. Because it didn't like double the pages. It added about as many pages as there are library item authors. It's taking a bit. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be right back. Okay, that I guess returned too big of a cursor to even perform the operation. So let me see if there's a way. Yeah. Pretty good. I don't want to quite do all that. Let's see what happened. Tabs open. Yes. All right, I'll just flush. So, scaffolding initial content. There are some basic structures in place, some basic pages. Goodness gracious. Makes sense. I actually just flushed everything else. I can't find the page ID 1. Makes sense. Okay, so I actually just need to. I'm using SQLite for development for simplicity. I prefer that. Keep things as simple as possible, as long as possible, until you know you need something more complicated. I know there's a lot of advice to say use your production database in your development environment. Eventually, I do think that's a good idea once you're knowing you're in production and you need production database features. But I don't think that's the default. I think there's some gray area, and that's just guidelines. All right, so now I'm going to need to import these authors, the article authors, and see how many pages there are. I'm going to read through this code and think it through one more time, more deeply, but just seems like it's correct, but obviously something's going wrong. So let's try again. All right. Let's see. If I do this well. Just to be really simple, let's say if I don't want to throw away Mary's work. I believe this is the correct one. And a smaller sample. importer. Content migration. This does take a while. All right, here's the thing. That's correct. Same dates, I believe it's correct. Let's try it again. Some other column didn't get preserved. I didn't edit it in both places, I think. All right, so this is 2,600 authors. This is what I was working with the sample. The problem is most of these authors in the library item are already existing in the magazine authors collection, so I don't want to. So I kind of want it to behave as would be expected, that not many of them would be added. So let's reread the code while. I'll run that importer. It's going to be a one-off commit because I didn't really have much to go by. Okay, so for each of these, let's just start with the person class case. When a person coming in, if they have a Drupal author ID, that means they will exist by definition. Because I'll be running this authors importer first. So this should this is redundant. All right. It's basically a safety net, but if I'm strict about the order in which I import these, here's the catch. That's where I went wrong. This is an empty string by default, double quotes. That's the problem. So I think I spotted the problem, and I think this is a safe refactor. Safe, couldn't even call it refactor because this hasn't been committed. All right, I need to check it. Doesn't equal empty string. Otherwise, this get would have been perfect. That's a subtle case. Well, lucky I didn't have to walk through debugging too much because I've hit that error in recent memory. Not equals empty string. But, I need to do the check here. There we go. Just copy and paste. Since this part is also the same. And, you know, this is actually. I see a way to simplify this. All right, cool. I think the rest of the logic is sound. Just appending it here or creating it here. Build it. All right. So yeah, so if we run server, contacts, people. All right, so 222 pages. Nobody with a library item authority. So this shouldn't really increase by more than, you know, like 10 pages, something at the most. I don't have the exact number I can get that, but let's just run it. Shooting by the hip, shooting from the hip just a little bit. Yeah, 294 rows in the spreadsheet, and there's like, whoa. So that's where I needed that safety. $229. $12.35. Row 12, that seems to be okay. What if it's one row off? $229 would be row 228. In that case, 3914. Which doesn't exist. Okay. Let's try this way. Could be a typo. It doesn't exist. That's correct, actually. Or I mean, let me get this column. Column is empty, so it shouldn't be trying to look anybody up. Okay. Let's get a little more concrete with this error here. So essentially, it's 168. Okay, yeah, so we're in there, 168. Then we go 123. And here it's getting the error. I should be able to run this again. So even in the debugging stage, I think this is good that I made that code. I could rewrite. Okay. All right, so that's definitely ID that 698 doesn't exist. So what about John Vogelborn 608? Yeah. I need to actually fix this at the source as well. These little typos and imperfections slip in all over the place, in particular when you're just copying and pasting numbers, and there's human error that gets into the process. It's not a big deal. Just can throw you off for a minute. Ah. Oh, yes, that's correct. There. I need to actually fix it. This XLS file, and then at the source. 608. which is on our Nextcloud instance. I think that might be the only error. I mean, it's really remarkable. That we've been able to move so much data around in general, and Mary's got such an attention to detail. You know, that only like one error has slipped in. That's just, I think I can leave that try catching, it's okay. But just a little bit more verbose. So we were at 222 pages earlier. All done. If I run the server again, I reload this page. 252, that's about right. That's about right. It's not about right, is it? So each time I'm running it, we're getting duplicates. Let's try this. If I run it again, this will be really clear. I'll have quadruplicates of some. So this is a different issue. It's not duplicating the ones where the author exists. Yeah, there we go. It is duplicating the ones where the author doesn't exist. So that's the opposite case. Goodness. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, that's good to know. All right, I can fix this. This needs to be an and. Because now I'm not, it's a new thing. We'll come back to that in a minute. Because this will be a combination of two. Just going to look over this. I believe I can use tilde here. There's a shortcut. It'll be like not. I brought him author exists and not magazine author exists. Come back to that in a minute. I think it's just tilde. I'm not sure. I'll have to look this up. won't run, of course, without that. Equals, okie dokie, people. Person dot find objects dot filter dot exists. So I need that check anyway to see if we've added this person before as a library author, as well as checking if we've added them in the magazine author. I need both of those checks to go into place, and then we're going to be good. That's why half of my import is being duplicated. Yeah. So. To be a shorthand for not. Or just not. Might be what I'm after. Just not. Oh, that's not what I'm going to do. My search over here. Not. Okay. Let's just try this. Yeah, if not, person exists and not. And not. And this ID helps really catching stuff, except then it gets in my way with its little popovers. Huh. Oh, goodness gracious. Alright, so we'll apply the same to organizations. I have to flush my content again because the query is too big to just drop to delete all those objects. Wish you could do that lazily. You could evaluate that lazily one at a time. Alright. And actually, I remember the flush is correct but didn't work. Stage these for now. I had to drop my database by deleting it off the disk. It's kind of a nice thing that you can just do with these SQLite databases. Delete. Wait for a moment. Wait for it. Wait for it. So yeah, the only constraint I have is I have to run these importers in succession. I have to run the magazine authors import and the library authors import. Even if I rerun them, I need to rerun them in succession in that order. Cool. And the trees don't waste any time in putting their leaves out. wonder if I could include that, creating that user in the scaffold initial content. Anyway, no, I don't want to do that. All right. I'm going to hit up a bunch of times. This is the slow one. I'm almost out of tea. But I have to do the whole import in order to have a good feeling about the library item authors import. "20 rows a second though, 17 to 20, 14. It's pretty speedy. That sound is the Loki, the seagulls outside. They're going to be acting up for the next month or so, going crazy. No way to tell them to be quiet. Check my CPU performance. I might be able to switch it away from power save and give it a little boost. A little bit ups and downs and ups and downs. I don't know if overall health hit in there. Whoa. This is some slow debugging. There's probably a more professional and efficient way of doing this. I'm going to rerun this importer to debug my other import script. Alright. But I can't think of it. Cannot think of it. Okay, we run the importer. Got 222 pages. Got to log in. $222 pages. Now, stop the server. Import library item authors. This is a lot faster. Oh shoot. It's gotten worse. It's gotten worse. We got a bunch of them we couldn't find, which wasn't the case before. I went from one troublesome author to a bunch, so let's double check real quick. this is probably the crux of the issue. It's probably in here. Yeah, it's here. So the meeting exists. So if the magazine author exists, or goodness, yeah, Boolean logic just, I don't know why, because it's a little bit mind-boggling for me. It seems like on the surface it would be so simple, but it's just when you have to kind of combine rules, it's easy to get mixed up. All right, so this should be an improvement. Let's see what happened. Yeah, all right, good. I don't know what this is going to look like in terms of this. Going to be, need to run the server. At 246. Okay, here's the momentary Jolly J Lanny. Got a duplicate entry there. Could have been from the first run. Duplicate here. And I think it's that first run where it went through and had the wrong Boolean logic. I'm going to run through it one more time. This time it's slow, but this time I believe it'll be correct. Yeah. All right, so delete that. If I could just drop the contacts, that would be ideal. Let me see something here. Django. I can actually do this. I can iterate over them. Delete it one at a time. All right. All right, so I'm just going to import these from contact models, import person, meeting, organization, for person in person objects all. I hope I can just iterate over these. Let's try that. I don't know if it's gonna have to fetch those or if I can fetch those lazy. Maybe an argument, query set API, all. I think I need the API reference here. That might be a way. I'm trying to iterate over them here, but there might be a way of explicitly using the iterator. Because then I want to run this delete. So the iterator might not work if it slides. One way I can just interrupt it, exit, and run the server and see if we have fewer pages. 2 of 116. So yeah, that's kind of working. It's taking almost as much time as running the importer though. It's really slow. Because happened. No, I'm just gonna delete it, and it takes less time to just scaffold the content, create the super user, run the migrations, than it does to run iteratively delete those. All right, so lesson learned there. It's not a. I can't find a really effective way to delete an entire table. So I've been just evaluating SQL. That was another option. To drop them all. All right. I guess I can just run it against a sample. It's essentially, you know, if I select the first, let's say, 500 rows, there's bound to be something. It's one of the things, just, you know, try to, as long as you can, work on a subset of data. All right, so this should be a lot faster. Basically, yeah, the indicator I'm looking for is if any of these get duplicated. So there should, every row that's imported should have either an author ID, library item ID, or both, basically. So any of those three conditions. There should be no rows with empty values in both columns because I'm running these importers. All right. At least this way I can delete them. Without having to scaffold everything again. All right, let's see what happened. All right, so we've got so far just a few author IDs. No duplication. That's interesting. Okay, it's a good sign. Organization matching query does not exist. This is a person. These are all people. So the final exception is the unhandled exception is when the organization didn't get it. All right, so let's just start with person from the top. Take it from the top. Get the index page. Get the author and ID library. Author and article. Author. This is just handling the corrected name. Oh yeah. All right. No, this is correct. I think this is behaving correctly because I'm running on a sample. So that's why I have to run it on the whole set. Okay. Because I'm there's just for consistency across these collections. When I run it on just the first 500 magazine authors, then there are rows in the library item authors that are referring to IDs in the magazine authors beyond row 500 or whatever. So hence the errors, and then that means the organization is an uncaught exception because I didn't handle that, but it's the same case that I didn't import the data, so I have to run it on a full data set. I can't cut that corner there. All right, so just need to run it. And I can rerun these. I've written them in a way that I can rerun them. And they should be safe. And it gets up to about row 500. Oh wait. it's handling a lot of, it's clipping right along now. It was for a minute there. All right, but I believe the code, aside from a couple of places where I'm not handling exceptions, because really they shouldn't throw an exception here. I would need to think if I need to write exception handling logic. It's not that bad. Yeah, and if I catch the specific kind of error, I'm just kind of not following PEP guidelines where you have how do they refer it? The exception should have a particular type of exception. I'm going to get linter errors on this one. The save is probably not going to be the problem, it's the find. All right, now that we've got the authors fully imported, now we're going to run this library item authors. No, it's still having problems. Now this could boil down to there's not really a pattern. Five, 6 rows. Every so many rows. There's not a specific interval here. It could be data issues, data quality issues. They're all people though. No, well, that the majority of our data are people, so that could just be a false, positive or false assessment. And by far, there's only like a handful of organizations and meetings. I'm thinking this boils down to data quality issues. Let's take a couple of them and look into it. I might just need to rerun everything from scratch, drop the database, but I believe this is data quality. That's what I'm leaning towards now. I think the code is looking correct. So library item authors. And that's one of the realizations here, is just moving between CMSs. The manual, the data migration is a manual process, and it's definitely a challenge. All right, so the case doesn't have a magazine author ID, so it shouldn't really be trying to find it by magazine author ID. That could be the problem. Yeah, because I'm combining them into one logical statement. Magazine author exists. Organization exists. So I'm combining these two. And in the else, yeah, that's it. I found it. So it's not a data quality issue. Again, Mary is very like detail oriented, and I guess it makes sense then that given the struggles I've been through here, that I've introduced an error. So basically, I can't combine these. I'm going to have a separate. I want to be able to rerun this. That's right. There's got to be a cleaner way of doing this. Oh yeah. Queue statements. Okay, this is where we can just take a quick break here, but I can use the queue here when I'm getting the organization. Queue, auto import that, or queue. And I think I should just reverse this. Because I should only run this when it's safe, right? So I'm only going to run it when it's, one of those is available. And then else. Yeah, I like stating things in the positive anyway because it's easier. I think that's my confusion, is what else. And this was, I think, because some of them were empty strings or something like that. I don't remember why. Here. Else. Change it here. Like that. Now, man. So this could be wrong. A little heavier this way. Let's just run that. Oh, come on. Yeah. Oh, crap. So this is maybe an unsafe assumption. Fudge. Gets up to 72%. No. So the first case is we just find the duplicate author. Then let's see if we've imported this library item author. The second case. If so, we'll just what will we do with it? We don't need to do anything with that person. We've already imported them. our Wingate. So this could also be my importing over and over and over, but let's find out what's going on here. So our Molly Wingate. The Tannenbaum, 121. All right. Yeah, I think this is just. The fact that I've imported this so many times, I could have had this thing working in. It's so difficult to reason about. All right, let's go ahead and drop it manually. Delete that. And then we'll just cycle through these a bit. Poor authors. I'm going to step away while this is running. Full set, and I'll be back shortly. All right, so it's complete. Now stepping back a little bit, it helps to have like a co-pilot. So pair programming is a really beneficial thing. But when I don't have a co-pilot, I have to just take a moment away from the keyboard a little bit to reflect. I think there's 3 cases here. There's a case where we have a Drupal author ID, in which case we'll look up that person based on that have been previously imported. The next case is if we've already imported these library item authors. I want to be able to check for that. And not do anything, not handle this one, basically. And then third case, if neither of those has happened, then we'll want to create it. I believe those are it's the logic for all 3 of these to succeed. I'm going to close off 2 branches of this. Because I believe the person logic is correct. And so I'm just going to apply that same logic to the organization and meeting. This is really painful. I don't understand why it's so messed up. So let me just check. Well, that's here. Yeah, these unknowns are all right. Yeah, where is it? 165 is definitely there. Mm-hmm. So this is probably not the problem then. This might be the problem. That I'm mutating the record incorrectly. No. Oh. That's basically why you catch specific error types. Because then I'm misleading myself the whole time. I'm going to try this without exception handling. Yeah. All right, cool. So let's basically follow this pattern. We don't need. I will put that exception handling back in with a narrow case where this query fails. That's the correct exception, and this will be more explanatory if that's it. There wasn't any problem here. Just give myself some hints if something goes wrong. Yeah, and so here's some unknowns. If I restore those, hopefully everything is in good order. Yeah, oh, I spoke too soon. All right. Celebrated at the 5-yard line. Okay, because we hit an exception here. We hit an exception here. That's cool. So I forgot to print that. Let's just find out what's up with that Intermountain yearly meeting. It's like one record. I can manually fix. $1169. So I check out library item authors, just make sure I'm on the right page. And your mountain yearly mean right here is 1169, column D, magazine author ID. Over here in the authors table. I'm not nearly meeting. Huh. Oh, but I see the problem. No, I don't see the problem. Right there, it's correct. Furthermore, if I check over here, so if I run the server, just another small mystery. We hop over to Wagtail. This is our contact type meeting to mountain yearly meeting. And I need to display for debugging purposes, which I think I actually committed this. Where are we at? Hooks is actually where I'm person meeting model. Just for debugging. And I'll roll these back. I might not need it on the organization. Let's find out. One thing I can think is I'm looking in the wrong bucket. I'm looking in. It's probably the first meeting I come to in the spreadsheet. No. There's a couple of them before that. It didn't throw on those. Is correct. Oh. Debugging message was pointing the wrong direction again. Good. No, it's pointing the right direction, but it was masking it. All right, so that's the initial working importer. Goodness. Wow. Very cool. So I'm just going to get a setup real quick for a recap. And I'll commit and clean up after the recap. So just double check here. Duplicates though. For this one, let me just clean it up manually. this. 1514. Let's check the spreadsheets again. The spreadsheet we know will be there. Team 14 is there. It's been a bit of a wrestling match. So that's the first problem. There's only one organization being imported. All right. When I look at the article authors, there should be that many. African Great Lakes Initiative of Friends Peace Teams. So these aren't being imported, so I've got a problem in my other importer. All right. Case of organization. Let me just double check this. The case could be the problem over here. For the data as well. Duplicate ID is column C. Just let me see if we... No, none of these organizations are marked as duplicates. So that's not a problem. So we're not going to be getting here, so we should be here. And this could be a problem. This can never be evaluating a true. Let's try that. Not equals string. Or this could be too greedy. is null, basically. That's not too greedy. Not equals empty cell, which is double quoted. Make sure I've got the right fielding. So it's getting into that. It's getting into that condition. So what's going on with this function? Ah. Might have been a typo. Did anything change? Nothing changed. Weird. Kind of a ghost in the machine. I don't know what I did. What's different? All right. No duplicates. Actually, important. All right. Let's summarize. Welcome to the recap of today's CodeBuddies.org live code session. Today we've been working on a content migration from the Western Friend website, which is built in Drupal, over to a new version of the Wagtail, a website built in Wagtail that we've been working on for a couple of years now. Slow and steady though. So one of the last big steps is migrating content, and after that we're going to hopefully not be adding any of the significant features, and we'll be down to fine-tuning the look and feel and usability of the site. But in order to get a good feel of how the site works as it stands, we need some content, and so let's use the content from the original website. When things are done, the importer has succeeded, we'll have the content in the Wagtail interface. And I'm carrying over metadata from the Drupal site. There are essentially two taxonomies, Drupal taxonomies, that we've been using to keep track of authors. There's two types of content that people can author in the website. There's magazine content, magazine articles specifically, and there's a multimedia library. It has videos and PDFs and other things that don't quite make it into the magazine magazine itself, but are still noteworthy, and as such are included in the site. Those authors, magazine or the library item authors, that is, need to be kind of merged into a common bucket, which we're now calling contacts. So we're kind of cleaning up some data a little bit and getting things a little bit more organized. Let's take a look at the code that I wrote today to import library item authors into this common authors or contacts bucket, as we're calling it now, which consists of people, meetings, and organizations. In order to import these data, we're writing Drupal management or Django management commands. Basically, a command is a Python script that imports or inherits from base command, and then it registers itself. Basically, the file name becomes the command that you can run in the terminal. So you can see I'm running manage.py import library item authors, pointing it to a file. I've already done that, but I'll just go ahead and show you in any case. What it essentially does is it opens a CSV file that we've exported from the Drupal website and parses each of those rows in the CSV and imports them into the correct location within our contacts app. So in order to tell it the command line argument, you just add an argument here. You tell it the argument name and what to do with it, what type of data it is. Then you write a handler method. And this is where everything happens, basically. In our handlers, and specifically this one, we are going to open that file and parse it to a list of dictionaries. Then we're going to iterate over those. We get this nice progress bar here from this Python module called tqdm. And it just takes an iterable and gives you the progress. Then from here, we're checking the library item author ID, sorry if I'm stumbling on my words a little bit, this session's been a little bit long. Then we're checking the type. There are those three types of authors that we can have, or three types of contacts: meetings, organizations, and people. And they have their own conditions. Basically, the raw data looks like this, and there are some columns here. And if the entity is an organization, it'll have a value in the organization column. If it's a meeting, it'll have a value in the meeting column. Otherwise, it's going to be a person. It'll have a given name and family name. But these are all mutually exclusive. We've worked to ensure that. So I can kind of rely on those in my logic. So a person is neither a meeting nor an organization. So there's only three cases for those rows. And the other thing is we are wanting to dedupe our data as well. We realize that through the lifespan of the Drupal website, there have been some duplicate entries. So we just went through, Mary actually went through and just earmarked the ones that were duplicates of, and which row they were duplicate of. So in the case that they are duplicate, we don't want to do anything. We're not going to import duplicates. We're going to handle those in another round when I actually import the library items and the articles, magazine articles. In any case, for each of those three conditions, we're going to handle that. We have a handler function. And I had to do this with three separate functions because there's enough nuance to these that I just couldn't figure out a way to have one kind of unified function. There may be a way of doing that, but I'm not really striving for elegance here. I'm giving myself enough hints and understanding along the way to get this import done, but it's not going to be something we'll maintain in the long run. It's something that'll get us across the gap, and once the site is up and running for a while, we'll probably remove the importer code. In the case I just wanted to catch all that we couldn't find. It didn't meet one of these criteria, whatever. I just wanted to let myself know that. Let's look at these handler functions. They basically do the same thing. So I'll go over one of them in depth and skim over the others. But for each one of them, in the case of a person, it's a little more going on here because it's got to handle the corrected. And actually, I can simplify it now that I think of it. The data structure of changes. If I look at these library item authors, we're only relying on given and family name anymore. We're correcting them in place. So essentially, that's simple. I'm just grabbing these out as Python variables. We're looking for these entity ID fields, and we're going to use them as a condition in these conditional checks. So first we're going to see if I've already imported this library item author. I want to be able to rerun these importers and have it just work. So we're just looking for if one exists. If it exists, we're actually just going to pass over it. The other case is, remember these are coming from two separate taxonomies. So I have another importer script that imports all of our magazine authors, like 2,000 of those. And in many cases, I think many of the library item authors had also contributed magazine articles. So there was some overlap and we wanted to unify those. We're unifying those in the same collection. So we wanted to indicate when somebody has been both a library item author and a magazine author that this is the same person. So Mary painstakingly went through I think it's about 200 rows in this library item author spreadsheet and just noted down the ones that were magazine authors as well, which I think the majority of them were associated, had to do this. The machine, we couldn't program a Python script to do that. You just have to have knowledge of the magazine, and that's Mary's job. So she did so with high degree of accuracy as well. I only found one error in the whole thing. Most of the stumbling that I did during today's live code session was just my own mental fatigue and not paying attention to details. So in the case we do have a Drupal author ID, we're just going to get that person. I'm doing a little bit of exception handling here to give myself a hint of what's going wrong. There's cases where I wasn't able to find it. Then we're going to just take that magazine author and we're going to tag it with this library item author ID as well. So we'll know that this person is the same person, and we'll have those in the record. And I don't think we have an example here, maybe under organizations. Oh, well, let's look under people. There will be some cases here under people where they've been in both collections here. Yep. And that's it, we just saved that person. So that was an existing author. These are the existing library item authors, but we'll pass over them. And then the final case is just, we're gonna create one. And at this point, we know it's just a library item author and not a magazine author. So we just create it with a given name and family name. And a little bit of exception handling here, I think from a previous session where I was having some troubles with one of the fields. I'm not sure why, but I haven't had any problems. This exception handling can probably go away. The other interesting thing to note is that Wagtail is a hierarchical content model, the Wagtail page model. So at the very start of this function, I should have mentioned this, we'll grab an index page, and this represents the root at which we'll put a person, a record of a person. We also have index pages for meetings and organizations. You can think of those as kind of like manila folders or branches of a tree, because it is a tree structure. And every page has to have a parent all the way to the root. And so we took that index page and added a child instance with this person and saved it in the case, the catch-all case where we didn't have a person. So this function, it's a little over like 30 or 40 lines, essentially repeated it, where we're trying to avoid the duplicates. The only differences with the other organization meeting content types, they're simpler. The structure, it just has a title instead of a given and family name. But we do the exact same thing. If there's an author by that name, we look it up and then tag it with the library item, author ID, giving myself a hint if something went wrong, passing over the existing and adding a new in the third case. That's essentially it. In a nutshell, how we are, and I'm not using this import anymore, so we'll delete that. I'm not adding command errors. That is how you write management commands in Django, and an example of writing a migration command using CSV data exported from an existing content management system of any type, doesn't matter, or any kind of CSV data you can get from any origin, any source, and how to get it into basically Django. None of this is too specific to Wagtail aside from adding it to the page tree. All right. Well, this has been another live code session on CodeBuddies community. If you're interested in getting involved with open source projects or learning to code or helping other people along their learning journey, stop by codebuddies.org. There's a lot of groups here on CodeBuddies who are interested in various topics, mostly relating to programming software development, but I think there's even some groups relating to, like the game, well, let's see, no, that's the language, Go. Math, maybe some philosophy or teaching how to code, things like that. CodeBuddies is a really active community, and the CodeBuddies platform is also open source. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time watching this recap, and have a great day.